One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. I'm here at the campus of Michigan State University, and I'm joined by Elliott Daniels. Elliott is the Associate Athletics Director for Student Athlete Engagement. Greetings, Elliott. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Blessed to be here.
Now, Elliott, this is my first time in the athletic offices here in Michigan State since they've been back over in Jennison Hall, where they were for 1,000 years, and everything looks real nice. I really am happy to be here today. I want to talk to you a little bit about your role and then what you guys actually do here at Michigan State. The role of Associate Athletics Director for Student Athlete Engagement. Talk to me a little bit about that. And you've been here for a while. You've been in college athletics for 16 years. Tell me about how what you started out doing and how what you do now is relevant for student athletes here on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, I started out in the academic services, retention, eligibility for our student athletes. I started here in 2003 as in that department, our student athlete services department, working with our student athletes on just the day-to-day academics and so on and so forth. Recently, a couple years ago, I was blessed to be able to move into this new created role as Associate AD for Student Athlete Engagement. And basically, that was been able to bring all of these services that we offer to try to make sure that we are developing our student athletes off the field. So personal development, player development, diversity and leadership, and then also campus collaborations into our athletic department. So making sure that we're developing our student athletes holistically, in addition to, mentally, and then also athletically on the field as well.
Now, when you talk about the different aspects of what you're doing, talk to me about how you do it, right? And is it across the board, all student athletes? I mean, all different sports, and obviously you work with coaches. I mean, does the athletic administration get involved with what you do and the evaluation of what you're doing? Talk to me a little bit about some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that very, very supportive. And I think what happens is that you got to be committed. You got to have an athletic department that's committed to developing our student athletes, not just in the classroom, not just on the playing surface or playing field, but then also in life. So making sure that they have the right resources and tools to be successful while they're on campus, but then also when they transition from campus. So I think what I would say is that we're very committed. We have athletic director, administration, and coaches that are very committed. And then on our end, what I would say from student athlete engagement, it is my job, our job to create buy-in, to show coaches and to show our staff that these things are important. They realize that it's important, but they to show them why it's important and why these student athletes need these skills to be successful.
What I've always wondered about this role on different campuses is how do you meet the student athletes where they are? There can't be a formula for a student athlete from this part of the country and one from this part of the country with completely different backgrounds. The formula wouldn't work across the board for everybody. So tell me about how you guys manage that. You got different personalities, different backgrounds, different everything, where they come from and where they're going. How do you tell me how you do that? I've always wondered how you guys do that.
Sure. I would say that you have to present opportunities, number one. But then also I say these positions always are grounds roots positions. Like these are not positions where you kind of sit back in the office and you design programming and you have the student athletes come to you. You got to literally go to the student athletes and you got to develop relationships with them. You got to go and talk to them and get to know them and get to know exactly what makes them tick, what goals do they want to have, what vision of themselves that they have when they're done. So you look at it from this standpoint. You have some student athletes when they come to college, they have a vision that they're going to go pro. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also say, hey, that you need these things and show them why these things are important if you go pro. And then when you're done playing your professional sport, you have some other student athletes when they come to campus, they know that this is the end. This is their last step in their athletic career. But then after this 4 to 5 years in college, they're going to have to transition to something else. And they may be looking at these things, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's some of the personal development things we do, diversity and leadership opportunities they can take advantage of while they're here. They may look at those things a little bit more in a more urgent sense because they look at it as, hey, when I'm done, this is it. This 4 to 5 years, my career plan is over. I got to go get a job and I got to go get a career. And we want to make sure that they can actually fulfill that vision of themselves that they can see. So I think getting to know them, building relationships, finding out what makes them tick, and then also stepping from behind that desk and going out and getting the student athletes is important. Not just sending an email or putting up a flyer saying, hey, come to this program, but you have to go get students and say, hey, this is why you need to be there, and we're trying to invest in you.
Now, from what I see here, you guys have been very successful at getting football and basketball involved in the student-athlete engagement process, which is a problem that a lot of people across the country haven't figured out how to do yet. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've been able to create and maintain that type of environment?
Absolutely. What I'll say, Ty, is that historically, particularly in these kind of programs, probably throughout college athletics, typically how the process works is that, a lot of people they invite student athletes to things. They send out an email, maybe a text message now, maybe put up a flyer, things like that. And when you think about the football, basketball, or the revenue generating student athlete, not saying they're any different than anybody else. They're visible, right? They're more visible. They have that always that carrot of professional sports sitting out there. And I think that, their focus sometimes may not be on the student athlete experience, not number one because of that, but also number two, the time and the energy that they spend on perfecting their craft to become maybe the best college football, basketball player they can be, and then also for that next level to the professional sports. So I think one of the things that we've decided to do is kind of a philosophical shift. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to invite you, we actually say we're going to actually engage you. Instead of invite, we've switched it to engage. We're actually going to bring these things to you. So if let's say if it's a presentation about the hospitality business industry, we're not going to invite you to that. We're going to bring it to you and make sure that you're engaged in that process. And I think what happens is that it takes not only us doing that, but you also have to have the various stakeholders to be receptive to it, and then also creating very high level of buy-in, as I said before, whether it's with the head football coach, head basketball coach, administration. And then when they see that this is an important need, and it ends up being a tool in their toolbox that they can use not only for right now, but also going forward in their pro career or career in the business world and beyond. At the end of the day, we want them to be successful in any industry that they decide to go into. And I think this method has helped us change kind of that dynamic to help engage them at a higher level.
Right. When you put it in those terms, it has me thinking that the key there is it's not that football won't participate in what we're having. We just have to switch it up a little bit for football or for basketball because of the nature of the sport and the nature of the visibility and the nature of the mind state of the student athletes who are participating in the sports. So engaging as opposed to inviting actually probably is a great thing. It seems like it's working here on campus at Michigan State.
Absolutely.
And I imagine since 2003, you've seen the evolution of programs or the evolution of communication, the evolution of what you can offer to a student athlete. When I was a student athlete here at Michigan State, and I wasn't heavily involved with student athlete development, but I do recall, and this is my limited knowledge, but all I recall is they're asking for people to go read to students, read to kids and stuff like that. And I kept thinking, like, there's certain guys that you're not going to get to read to kids. So it seems like a lot of this program is for a certain type of person. I've always wondered about that. And it seems like here at Michigan State, you guys have figured out how to, if not solve, at least approach the problem of engaging football and football student athletes to be involved with student athlete engagement and what you're doing here. Talk to me a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say that a couple things. I think that you have to get creative. And I think one of the things that we try to do here is every year add a different wrinkle, add a different niche, come up with different programming. And also tailor the programming to the student athletes. And Ty, you're exactly right. I'm a former student athlete. I played football at Eastern Michigan, but that was a while ago. So we played around the same time. And the student athlete, I won't say that maybe the student athlete has changed, but I would say their needs have changed. The needs have evolved. The things that we can offer and do for them have evolved. You got student athletes that are getting cost of attendance now. So they're getting more access to money. They can do internships. They can work. They can do some things that's a little bit different that potentially we couldn't do. So they need more education on some things as well. We're unique in this aspect that I would say is that we've been able to engage whether it's football, basketball, women's basketball, hockey, and other sports because of some of the folks that we have working in those programs. I'll give you an example. Lorenzo Guest, who's our associate head strength coach, myself and him have been working together probably the last 7 years or so, putting on basically our player development program, which is called the Overtime program for our football team. His role is very unique because he's a strength coach, but he's also he's our director of player enrichment for our football team. So he's basically the eyes and ears of our football program when it comes to player development. If you really think about it, who is around the guys and who is around our student athletes, our ladies and men more than anybody? It's typically the student athlete development people, it's the academic people, and strength conditioning people and athletic training. Having somebody in his role where he's basically around them and he can push out the messages that we're trying to do and push out the importance of the programming that we're trying to have, and also us being able to kind of tag team and be that grounds roots kind of team to be able to make sure that guys see the importance of coming to these programming is very, 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 very important.
That seems to address the issue of, and this ties back to what I know about football coaches and when I've talked to student athlete development professionals, football coaches they are really specific about the time their student athletes spend away from football. And they're like, well, if we're going to put together some programming, we'll put it together ourselves, right? As opposed to let us not buy into what you guys are doing. Or that stuff doesn't really work for our guys, so we'll come up with our own stuff. It seems like you guys have figured out a way or are figuring out a way to engage. And I think it's pretty ingenious to have a strength and conditioning coach that is also formally part of the student athlete enrichment program. They always have done it. Strength and conditioning coaches have always done it. But I don't know if it's ever been formally a part of it like you've done with Lorenzo Guest. And I'll have him on here in a few weeks on the One Question podcast, and I'll ask him about it. But I think that's pretty ingenious. Tell me how that came about, because it had to be since you were here, because Lorenzo wasn't here back in 2003. So tell me how that came about.
Absolutely. I think it's a unique model. And I think actually it developed organically because myself and then also Lorenzo, we both have a passion for developing student athletes off the court and off the field and off their playing surface. I think that you have to start there first. And I'm not saying that everybody doesn't have that. Most people do, or we wouldn't be working in college athletics. But I think that the thing that makes this program run for us is that we're not doing this for any credibility or anything like that. We really care about them because we've walked the walk. Lorenzo played football here and basketball here, so he knows. I'm a former Division I football player myself. We know what's coming down the line. So, and then when you have, I'll say this, when you have, coaches, whether it's Coach D'Antonio, whether it's Coach Izzo, that buy into the overall holistic development of student athletes and saying, hey, we got to make sure that they're developed as well off the court and off the field. I think that's important as well. So it developed organically. We were able to take a model that was started and kind of start meeting with the freshman student athletes that we did once a week and kind of, bring back former players, bring back players who did it right, bring back players who didn't do it right, bring in career people, bring in people from campus to basically say, hey, we want to basically give you the playbook of what it is to be successful at Michigan State while you're here. But these things are also going to help you be successful when you're done. The second piece that we did is that we brought back the faculty mentor program, which basically we paired them up with somebody on campus. We talked to them and say, hey, you have to be able to know somebody that is not in this walls, not a part of the athletic department, not a part of the football program, but somebody who can speak for your skills, abilities, and talents away from this. So being able to do that. And then we also do a number of transitional things, more specific things with our juniors and seniors. A lot of that has around career coaching, career building, then also bringing in companies to basically help them get themselves in front of companies to get more marketable for jobs, interviewing, things like that, to kind of introduce some of the career aspects to it as well.
Does that help address the guys who probably need a little more attention? If I was coaching, every football team would have some guys in there that will probably have crazed, because football is a violent sport. You need guys with an attitude. The nature of this overtime program and meeting with people as they come in as a freshman and all the way through, does that help keep them engaged in some of the things you're doing as they progress through their career here at Michigan State?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest piece of this, I'm telling you, I believe, is that as a student athlete engagement person who works with student athletes on other stuff besides playing, I think that you have to find out and build a relationship with the player. with the student athlete. And if you can individually build a relationship with the player, they know that, number one, you're doing this not just to take up their time. I think a lot of student athletes are so busy that they're saying, okay, so what is this thing that you want me to do? What's this program? What's this session, this workshop? Oh, man, this is just another thing I have to do. But if you are able, if everybody is totally bought in, from the head coach to the assistant coaches to the strength and conditioning staff, and you're getting the same consistent messages wherever you go, I think that creates this higher level of buy-in, and it becomes more of a of what we do, as opposed to, oh, here's another session that I have to go to just to check off a box. And I think when a lot of people handle it like this, Todd, they send an email, they bring in a speaker, they put up a flyer, and they say, hey, come to this workshop. And, there's no kind of behind the scenes education about why this is important, if that makes sense. So I think that solves that guy that you're talking about. At least gets that person a little bit closer to knowing why this is important. And then maybe if they don't take it seriously, at least down the road, they can say, oh, now I can go back to that moment in time when I sat in front of that company and talked to them about a job. That's what they were talking about. And I can go back to that and that's a tool in my toolbox that I can use.
It sounds like this is very beneficial for the student athletes here. Again, student athletes are different. The tennis player is going to be different than the basketball player, who's going to be different than the person who plays golf. And it sounds like you guys here have either figured out or are constantly figuring out an evolutionary process of how to engage student athletes so that the student athlete experience is not just a buzzword for the athletic director to use, but it's actually a culture here at Michigan State. I think that's a great thing, and I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Podcast.
Excellent.
That was Elliott Daniels. He's the Associate Athletics Director for Student Athlete Engagement at Michigan State University. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.